Hello and welcome back to another episode of Focus on K-12, EdTech, and the Education Experience. My name is Doug Konopelko, and I'm an education strategist for CDWG. Today, I talked to Joe Marquez, the Director of Academic Innovation for CUE. We discuss what it's going to be like getting back to school this year, and what are some things that leaders are thinking about across the country. Let's dive in.
My name is Joe Marquez. I'm an educator out of the Central Valley of California. Currently, I am Director of Academic Innovation for a nonprofit in California known as CUE. And I got my start in education because I wanted to really affect the lives of young students. And I started doing that as a coach. I coached football and wrestling, and I coached for a middle school, and I really enjoyed that age group and saw that I can make a positive impact on their lives and decided to go into teaching based upon that.
Excellent. Well, appreciate it. Appreciate you joining us today. So tell me then, what does CUE stand for, if it stands for something?
Well, it used to stand for Computer Using Educators. And this was back in 1978 when computers were few and far between and bulky and, kind of stuff. But now every educator uses a computer, right? And so basically CUE is for everybody. We have pedagogy on our brains and students in our hearts, but technology at the top of mind. How can we utilize technology to really impact student learning, to increase engagement, to enhance creativity? How can we utilize these tools to really change the game of what education is, not just replacing a pencil and paper with a keyboard and mouse? How can we really truly change the game going forward with these devices?
Yeah, so we're kicking off now the third school year impacted by the pandemic. You work with teachers, with leaders from all over. Tell me kind of what's going through the mind of the folks that you're working with. What kind of things are you having those conversations around right now?
One of the things that is really top of mind, not only for educators, but for administrators, is all of these tools that were utilized during the pandemic. Which ones are here to stay? And I really ask the leaders, what tools were a lifesaver? Meaning, in the moment, in distance learning, in hybrid learning, what tools were just there and saved the day? And then what tools are a game changer? Meaning it doesn't matter which modality you're utilizing for teaching, whether it's distance learning, hybrid learning, or face-to-face learning, which tool completely changed the game for teachers and students? And I think when you look at it that way, you can really delve into the tools that you want to keep and keep moving forward with. And then which tools you can say, you know what? I'm going to hang up the lifesaver. Thank you so much for being here at that moment. But we're going to move on to the tools that truly enhance education for our students. And I think when you look at it through that lens, you start seeing some of these tools rise to the top. And then you can start talking budget going forward based on, kind of that mindset.
So what are some of the tools that you feel like in the districts that you're working with, they're talking about as the game changers, right? What are the things that really, not only save the day, but now looking forward are ready to change their digital ecosystem?
Well, and that's a big, huge, loaded question because every district has different priorities and every tool will make positive or different changes for that particular ecosystem of learners, right? And so I believe that the tools that truly made the difference is that you complete the triangle of communication, where the students, the teacher, and the parents were always kept in the loop. So I think districts finally started realizing that a true utilization of an LMS has been key. Now, a lot of times, like I've talked with teachers in the past before the pandemic happened who utilized Google Classroom. They would just utilize it to maybe post some assignments here or there or post occasionally. And now they're realizing, wait a minute, if I post every day, if I post my agenda, my parents are kept in the loop. If I post the assignments there, students who are absent are kept in the loop. And my mindset is you have to treat every day as a hybrid day, right? And the reason for that is we have students that are absent because they're sick. We have students who are absent because of sports, absent because of arts extracurricular, absent all the time. But if you're posting to your LMS, communicating through your LMS daily, nobody misses out. And I think that's what administrators finally started recognizing, whether you're using Schoology or Canvas or Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, that communication tool was invaluable during the pandemic, and it's going to continue to be invaluable moving forward.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying too is that it's not just what tools were lifesavers and what tools were game changers, but what's the pedagogy and the practices and the processes that we changed through this time that, like a more consistent use of a specific tool that, led to a game changing ecosystem that the students and the parents and the teachers were all part of.
No, absolutely. It's a mind shift, right? And the mind shift is, I don't just have to post my agenda on the board, right? On the whiteboard. I can post the agenda to a location that is then distributed to all the stakeholders that need to know this information. It also takes the extra steps that teachers used to have to do, right? They were used to write on the board, post it in their Google Classroom, post it on their classroom website. Now, with the integration of all of these LMSs, you post it once and it gets distributed to all the communication avenues that are needed. So it's truly taking away some of the things off of our teachers' plates. That's one of the things. And I also truly believe the tools that truly change the game were tools that fall in line with kind of this filter that I use to really identify which tools are good. And it's called the inspect, redirect, make correct model. And basically what that means is a teacher at any moment, whether you're in a distance model, hybrid model, or face-to-face model, at any moment, you should be able to check for understanding of your students without them hitting submit, without them having to turn something in. In the moment, the tool should automatically give you the window of, are my students understanding the content being taught? And then the tool should allow you to redirect those students. Okay, class, we are not getting this. Let me go a different route. Let me give you a different activity. Let me push something else out to you. Redirect them to get them on the path towards understanding the material. And then finally, because you're using technology, not having to go and make photocopies of this new thing that you're creating, it should allow the students to make those corrections in real time that you can visually see. Okay, after my redirect, now the understanding is there. Now they're making those corrections. That inspect, redirect, make correct model is incredibly important. And it's important because we no longer can be educators of, I'm going to give a quiz on Monday. I'm going to assess them on Tuesday. It's no, you should be able to see, is it working now? And I think we're starting to realize there's so many tools out there that allow for that to happen. Those were the game-changing tools, the instant insight into, is the teaching working? And if not, what can I do to make it work better, right? And not wait for tomorrow to do that.
And it sounds like one of the themes that's coming out of not just our conversation today, but in all these conversations over the last few months, especially, is we've been looking for technology to help us, close the feedback loop in that example, right? To really shorten that time of inspect, redirect, make correct, but also to shorten that communication time, right? To eliminate that communication time. And in some cases, not just eliminate the time, like where a parent can then see what's happening, maybe not in real time on each assignment, but at least like as it finishes, they can see that it's finished and pieces like that. But not just shortening the loop to where it can happen instantly, but where the teacher doesn't have to take a deliberate step toward sharing because of the way that the communication channels, because of the way the tools are set up, especially when we start to go down that road of like interoperability, where I can finish something in something like Google Classroom, to extend from your example, and that goes into my LMS so that the teacher didn't have to take an extra step to say this is complete, but the parent can go to that like one pane of glass and see where's the student right now.
100%. There needs to be complete transparency from the student to the teacher to the parent. So you can allow that triangle, that amazing triangle of learning, to have no roadblocks into it. And that's absolutely key. And that's why I love seeing that all of these LMSs are integrating with all of these ecosystems. Whether you're working in an Apple ecosystem, a Microsoft ecosystem, or a Google ecosystem, you're seeing all these LMSs creating this ecosystem where that instant post, where parents can see, students can see, that is becoming invaluable in the classroom, because we need to remove roadblocks for learning. And we have to understand sometimes the roadblocks can be the students, meaning maybe they aren't inspired by the work, so they don't get inspired to do the work. I remember I had a student in my classroom who refused to do work on the computer. And the parents had a meeting with me, and it's like, she doesn't like working on the computer. Can she do it with the paper or pencil? Can she do it with paper pencil? I go, we can, but let's ask her why she doesn't want to do the computer. So we had a meeting, and we go, why do you not want to use the computer? She goes, because Mr. Marquez knows instantly when I'm not doing my work. He's on me right away. I would rather, do it over the weekend. And I'm like, aha, it's because the feedback loop is so heightened, and you can't have those times of the student not doing the work. You can see that. That removes a roadblock. And when students realize, wait a minute, my teacher can see whether I'm on task or not, I'd rather be on task than constantly being, hey, do your work, right? You remove those roadblocks, you remove those excuses, and amazing things begin to happen. And it's pretty amazing because the technology allows that window, that inspect, part of inspect, redirect, make correct, that inspect creates that transparency between teacher and student.
Well, I think that's also one way in which the pandemic helped move some of those ideas forward, like what you're talking about with the LMSs being able to integrate with other programs. I feel like so many tools and programs and ecosystems can be more interoperable now, or more collaborative, because there was finally this real premium. Like, it was almost like if you didn't have this feature, it was like, none shall pass, right? And if you can't play in the education ecosystem if you don't have this, right? Like, so I look at something like breakout rooms, which when we started the pandemic, one or two tools had, and maybe one of them did it pretty well. And by the end of the pandemic, every video conferencing tool had breakout rooms. There's even separate tools specifically for breakout rooms, because it became such an important part. It became like a critical to quality. You can't play in the game unless you have this. And I think of all that innovation that happened that really drove forward those tools that we wanted to be better, right? We wanted them to be able to do those things for all of this time, for the last 10 years, but they finally had like this, you absolutely have to do it to play the game.
No, I think you're absolutely right? We have to get out of the mindset of bemoaning what we lost during the pandemic and celebrating what has been gained. And that innovation with all of these tools, bringing forth all these things that we need in education, that was heightened during this time. And also, it completely laid bare what these tools were lacking, even in a face-to-face environment. When you go in and you identify that some of our students didn't have the accessibility tools that were needed, it's astonishing what has been gained during this time, right? When you are allowing students to remove those roadblocks by having a screen reader, by removing those roadblocks to having a screen translator. I mean, Microsoft's Immersive Reader is probably one of the greatest tools to be utilized during this pandemic, because it crossed language barriers, it crossed reading barriers. It allowed for the students to have accessible reading from their own home. That is key.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about, a game changer, because now with that available in the classroom, you've removed that roadblock and allowed them to participate in the conversation, not wait for the conversation.
Yeah. And at the other end of that, right, when we think about the innovation that happened, not just looking at it from a, like, how great was this, and look at all these tools they banded together, but I think what was really interesting to see was that you had tools that, like, if you've worked with a certain company over the years where you've said, hey, we would really love this feature. And they're like, oh, well, it takes 2 years to get a feature, through our entire process and through the product team and built out. And we saw that like when the rubber meets the road, if even some of these like juggernauts, if they need to shift and to pivot to meet the demand and to meet the need, like it can be done, right? It may not be perfect every step of the way, but it can absolutely be done, which is also why a lot of the companies that were like the most flexible kind of won out throughout the pandemic.
Yeah, I think competition is glorious, right? You always get the people that ask you, are you team Nearpod or team Pear Deck? Are you team Quizzes or team Kahoot? I said, I'm team everybody. Because when one comes with an innovation, the other has to follow, and then that one has to one up, so the other one ones up. So competition, the only winners are everybody. And that's fantastic because you start getting the features you're asking for. And I think you're absolutely right. This pandemic put the pressure on these tools to bring forth features that allowed accessibility, that allowed instant communication, that allowed students to share their knowledge in multiple modalities, whether it be video, text, voice, or drawing. That is key, right? You hear that term all the time, voice and choice, and it's a buzzword that you're like, oh, okay. But no, it's absolutely true. Technology allows students to get the knowledge out of their head in a modality that best fits them. It doesn't have to be just text. It can be voice. It can be video. It can be drawings. It can be infographics. And that's the glorious thing about technology, is it allows the students' creativity to go along with their communication of knowledge on what they're learning. And I think that's an amazing and brilliant thing that has come out of this pandemic. It's that the teachers who were tech hesitant before, who still may be tech hesitant today, were able to see the amazing innovations their students were making now. And if they saw what they can do in a distance format or a hybrid format, imagine what they can do in a face-to-face format. So that fear of technology should be gone because of the embracing of what students can create now. And I think that is probably one of the greatest things that has come out of this pandemic, is the tech hesitant teachers finally see how tech can allow students to be themselves. And I think that's amazing.
Absolutely. Hey, Joe, I wish that you had more energy, more passion for the subject, but, I guess we're stuck with this real dull guy here. So thank you so much for bringing it every day for the students, for the teachers, for the leaders, and thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks for joining us today on Focus on K-12 EdTech and the Education Experience. If you enjoyed today's show, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the little bell so that you get notified whenever we post a new episode. Or reach out to me on Twitter @dconopelco. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time as we focus on K-12.